Okay, so good afternoon, students, and welcome to the third lecture of cloud computing and virtualization. Uh, Going through the set of content, basically, these are the questions which, after viewing this lecture, you'll be able to answer. Questions are that what are the characteristics of cloud computing, and are the characteristics any different when they are compiled by NIST? What are the set of challenges ahead in the field of cloud computing? And is there any reference model to which cloud computing adheres? So, going forward, to answer the first question was what are the characteristics of cloud computing? So, characteristics of cloud computing are basically the bullet points which, if anybody asks you that how are you going to basically uh, define cloud computing, right? So, these are the bullet points, these are the special features of cloud computing. So, the first one is there are no upfront commitments. The definition says that this means you are not agreeing to contractual minimums in usage or billing of fronts. The point is, many contracts which you sign, they have a minimum charge. So even if you are not going to use the product, uh, or you use it like bare minimum, still you are going to pay for it fully, right? Or you have to pay an obligated amount. Uh, for example, in I read it somewhere that in Pakistan, um, you have to pay for 50 units per month as electricity bill. Even if you use 10 units, you have to pay for 50 units minimum. But in case if you were using a cloud computing service, if you use 5 units of that service, you will be paying only for the 5 units of service, right? So this is what I meant by no upfront commitments, right? Next is on-demand access. By on-demand access means that the user can provision or deploy the cloud resources anytime or anywhere, and there is no need to interact with the cloud service provider. So the point is like that there will be zero intervention of the cloud service provider. Okay. Okay. Next point is nice pricing. Um, there are many business models which provide different services, and on the basis of that, the price of the service is being determined. So, I'll be like telling you in more detail about the pricing schemes. So, like the first one is time based. Time based pricing scheme is for how long you have used the service. Okay. Next is volume based, that how much amount of the service you have used. It depends on the metric system that the service provider is using. Next is flat rate. Flat rate is fixed tariff rate, which is like it's a fixed amount, okay, that you have to pay. Um, Next is priority pricing. Priority pricing is at times services are labeled as priority based. So in case if you are using any service, so it might happen that that service might be costlier than the normal services that are available. Okay. Next is edge pricing. Edge pricing means that it depends upon the distance between the user and the service, right? So if distance is more, the price might be more, right? Or vice versa. Next is responsive pricing. Responsive pricing is at times there are service congestions, and at that point of time the user is not able to use the service properly. So if there is a service congestion, then the price gets the pricing scheme gets activated. Okay. Next is responsive pricing. I've done, okay, fine. Next is session oriented. So this is basically it depends upon the type of session that you are conducting. Okay. Next is content based. It depends upon what the content user has accessed or will upload or download, whatever. Next is location based. It depends upon the geographical location of the user, or to be very precise, the access point of the user. Okay. Next is free of charge. There are certain services which the cloud service provider might not even charge you. Fine, so those services come under free of charge. Next is online accounting. information will be maintained while the user is online. So everything, when he or she is online, then only he'll have to pay for the service. Fine. Next is offline. Offline is once the user has used the service, after that the payment process can be proceed or processed. Okay, now we have basically three categories, which are fixed pricing, dynamic pricing, and market dependent pricing. In fixed pricing, um, we have pay per use pricing, we have subscription based pricing, and we have around, yeah, list price or menu price. Fine. So in pay per use pricing, as the term suggests, the user is going to pay only for the amount that he or she used. For example, in Amazon Web Services EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud, they charge hourly for RAM or CPU usage, and the same company, Amazon Web Services, for their simple storage service S3, they charge per GB of storage or per data transferred in GB, right? So this is what I meant by pay per use basis. When we talk about uh, subscription bullet, the basically what happens is, as compared to what you use, the first category subscription is, it will be cost, it will see, basically you're going to pay for the service on a recurring basis. Fine. That, for example, Dropbox, they have various pricing assigned for different GBs. Okay. And Google App Engine, they can charge you on a monthly basis, they can charge you on a daily basis, or on a user basis, or it can be hourly basis as well. Okay. um, we have one more, which is hybrid pricing, and hybrid is basically the combination of both the pay per use as well as the subscription based. In that, what happens that, for example, you're using Google App Engine and you have subscribed it on a monthly basis. Fine. But even on a monthly basis, the Google App Engine is going to provide you a specified amount of GBs that you can use. But for instance, someday it might happen that you cross that monthly plan, right? That around like 20 GB was provided and you crossed it, 21 GB. Then after that, that monthly subscription will be converted into pay per use, right? They will start charging you on an hourly basis, fine, on the amount of data that you're constantly using till the month gets over and the next month gets in. So fine, that your service will be switched back to the subscription basis. Fine. So this is what I meant by the hybrid pricing. Now second one is dynamic pricing. By dynamic pricing, basically it depends on user supply and demand, because at times there are services which are in high demand in the market, and at that time the company can raise the prices of that product. So definitely they have, in the long run, they have to see the benefit as well. So yeah. Next is market dependent pricing. So again, it depends upon the market, that what service is in high demands or something. In market dependent pricing, we have concepts like negotiation, where the by negotiation I mean, you can bargain with the service provider, and it depends upon the relationship between you and the provider, right? So at that time it might happen that the service, you can get that service at a comparatively lower cost. Fine. Okay. And even we have negotiation terms, even we have auditing, where there are market bids, and it depends. So that's a fairly different topic, I won't move into that much detail. Next is simplified application acceleration and scalability. So I hope you people are very much aware about the term scalability. Uh, we can compare the term scalability to a rubber band. Okay, a rubber band can hold around 10 pens, fine, and if required, it can even hold up to 100 pens. If required, it can hold up to 2 pens. So by scalability, I mean that you can scale it up or scale it down depending upon your requirement. Okay, so basically we have three categories in scalability. and these are vertical scaling, horizontal scaling, and diagonal scaling. Okay, by vertical scaling, it means to scale up. Scale up means in that case only resources will be added. Okay, no code will be changed, no infrastructure will be uh, removed or added up. So vertical scaling uh, is that thing. Okay, next is horizontal scaling. In horizontal scaling you are going to scale out. By this I mean that you might have to provision more, or you might have to remove uh, certain resources. So basically you are going to combine all these and going to create a unified single system. Fine. As compared to vertical scaling, horizontal scaling is more labor intensive, and it takes more time to deploy as compared to vertical, because here in horizontal you're going to change everything till the scratch, right? Diagonal scaling is basically the combination of vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. So like you can keep scaling up your resources until you reach that tipping point, uh, right, where you cannot use vertical scaling anymore, and at that time you can clone your server, right? So that cloning your server is a horizontal scaling thing. So diagonal scaling is basically the sweet spot of cloud computing. So it depends, fine, on your requirements or on the requirements of the time. Next is efficient resource allocation. Now, basically what happens is we have a list of consumers, right? And we have a global pool of resources, right? So, what does the cloud service provider do? That from these global pool of tasks, the scheduler picks up the task, and it forwards those tasks to the virtual machine manager. The virtual machine manager will redirect those requests to the various virtual machines, okay, depending upon the task, as well as it will maintain as well as it will maintain the metering and everything, right? That which virtual machine is working on which task and everything. And all these virtual machines are basically taking up the resources from the physical machines which are on the bottom of the stack, right? I hope you understand by the term virtual machine I mean that it is a software model, right, of the physical machine, right? So everything is similar. The only difference is virtual machines are taking up the resources provided by the physical machines. They don't have anything of their own, right? So this is what I meant by efficient resource allocation. The point here is that one physical machine you can create up to many virtual machines. It depends upon the architecture of the physical machine. For example, the consumers came to you suddenly, and there were around 20 consumers who want to work on something, right? And you need 20 virtual machines at that point of time. So that physical machine, one physical machine can make up to 10 virtual machines, right? So only two physical machines, that is only resources of two physical machines will be used, है ना? And rest of the physical machines will be shut down. You don't need to use them, or they can be taken into some other work. So this is what is efficient resource allocation, right? Next term is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is basically have you ever wondered that all your data is residing in somebody else's infrastructure, and that too in data centers, right? So in data centers a lot of high power consumption take place. So even they require a lot of electricity as well. So at that point of time you need some efficient energy mechanism. So uh, we use server consolidation there. Consolidation means it's a principle of server virtualization where a single physical server can hold up to one or more virtual servers. Okay. Next is power management. We have static power management, we have dynamic power management. Static power management will be covering all the fixed power caps to manage the aggregate power, and the dynamics ones will be they'll be monitoring the resources which are consuming power, and according to that they will scale up or scale down the power distribution thing. Okay, so this is energy efficiency. Next is seamless creation and the use of third party services. Seamless creation is see the it's so simple to create a virtual machine, and in that you can deploy your own operating system. Like I'll be uh, telling you that practically as well, that you just need to move on any of these cloud service provider sites, and there you need to enter your email address and all your personal information, and with that the billing details as well, like the credit card details or everything, and in just a few single clicks you are able to get the desired machine of your choice. So it is that simple. That is the reason it's seamless creation. It doesn't even take much of your time or much of your efforts. You don't even need to learn anything in that. Fine. And the use of third party services. By third party services, I mean that there are, uh, like for example, cloud service provider may outsource their work to some other cloud service provider. For example, if a software as a service product, Dropbox, they can keep their data in the data centers of the third party vendor, third party infrastructure as a service vendor, which is AWS, Amazon Web Services. So this is outsourcing. Then we even have mergers and acquisitions. Like for example, Microsoft, they acquired Skype, and like I hope you understand my point. So, but in that case, you have to be very careful about the contract, because in case your original owner was Skype, but then suddenly Microsoft acquired Skype, right? So now your new owner is Microsoft. So at that time, your contract, your service level agreements, they should be flexible enough, like to address your points in the contract, right? And we even have cloud brokers in third party services. We even have cloud brokers who are the people who basically negotiate between the cloud service provider and the consumer. The cloud brokers play as matchmaking between the provider and the consumer. Coming on to the next point, uh, just a second. Now, characteristics of cloud computing as per NIST. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they basically promote innovation and test industrial competitiveness, as I said. So they are basically US, uh, from the United States. So um, they gave these five essential characteristics of a cloud computing. Now, they are basically similar to the ones I told you, but just I'll tell you the mapping in between them. Like, the first one is on-demand self-service. On-demand self-service is similar to seamless creation and on-demand access, right? So, basically, the user can deploy the resources anytime and anywhere, and obviously they don't need the help of cloud service provider in that. So this is what I meant by on demand self service. Next is broad network access. Broad network access is that um, uh, this cloud services are platform independent. You can use your service on your PDA, your laptops, your phones, right? You can use them anywhere. Next is resource pooling. By resource pooling, uh, there is a huge huge pool of resources from which the scheduler is basically pulling out the services for you, right? So the customer can choose between any type of services he wants. So this is what I meant by resource pooling. Okay. Next is rapid elasticity, that is similar to the term scalability. I don't think so I need to explain it again. Okay. Um, Next is measured service. By measured service, I mean that as cloud computing is based on the grounds of utility computing, by utility, I told you, by utility you mean the services that you use like electricity, water, gas, and these are basically metered services. So by metered services, we mean to say that each and every service that you are using is going to be metered and audited by the provider and the cloud auditor, and you are going to pay for only the amount of services that you have used, right? So going forward, uh, these are the additional advantages of cloud computing. uh, First one is lower cost. Basically, by lower cost, uh, all your maintenance cost is gone. You don't need to maintain the service anymore. You don't need to pay for the extra IT staff management, right? You don't need to pay for any sort of software and hardware licensing. So all these costs are gone. Even like for example, if you go and buy a server for $1,000, but after few years, if you try to resell that server, you won't be able to get $1,000 back, right? So all these stuff, you're not going to go through them again and again. So this is the point of lower cost. Fine. Next is ease of utilization. It is so easy to use the cloud services. You just need to log in um, into that particular IP address with your login credentials, and you are going to use that service. It is that easy, right? You don't need to learn about the technicalities of that software or anything, right? So this is how it's so easy for a third person to use. Next is the quality of service. Quality of service is dependent upon the service level agreement that you signed with the vendor. So you might have to go through the quality of service points which the vendor is providing you. Fine. Next is reliability. Again, reliability is dependent on the vendor, and reliability also includes the points like security and privacy, and it all depends upon the contract that you signed with the vendor. Okay. Outsourced IT management. Outsourced IT management is the same example which I quoted before in the previous slides, that the cloud service provider can outsource a certain task of his to the other service providers. So like cloud service, like this is the connection. You have consumer, then you have cloud service provider, and cloud service provider is connected to another cloud service provider, right, for some of his task. Next is simplified maintenance and upgrade. Again, as a central system is being maintained, and obviously CSP is maintaining all that central service, so a single a set of patches and upgrades can update all the machines in his or her data center. So it is that simple to upgrade and maintain your data center using cloud computing. Next, we have disadvantages. Now, in disadvantages, one point is latency. Uh, See, cloud computing is a stateless server basically. And why? Because internet is itself stateless. They are working through uh, their WAN connectivity. So at times it happens that there is a latency in the internet. So definitely your cloud computing applications, they suffer from this inherent latency because of internet. So you cannot blame that thing for that, right? Next comes performance. Now, by performance, I mean that even if you are directly interacting with the cloud service provider, there is still an architectural disconnect between you and the provider, because what happens is you request certain service from cloud service provider. So HTTP and puts and gets and all sorts of requests are going to the service provider, then they are going to respond back. So there is a disconnect, right? There is an performance, like certain applications are going to be hit by that performance lag. And by stateless, I mean that, for example, you as a consumer send some messages, right? But it might happen that in the middle of the communication, some medium gets, like, it might be in a bad condition or it gets faulty, right? So, but your communication should be successful. So for that, the messages will reach the destination, that is the provider, through different routes, right? So due to that, there will be a performance lag. Next is privacy and security. Privacy and security should have, like, even if you ask a third person who doesn't know anything about cloud computing, they are going to say that privacy and security is one of the major disadvantages of cloud computing, and still a lot of research is being done on that. So it is very clear because your data is basically residing in somebody else's infrastructure or data centers, right? So there are definitely security issues in that. So anyways, it um, still a lot of research is being done. So this is a constant concern of cloud computing. Next is regulatory compliance. Now, regulatory compliance means it refers to a discipline and process of ensuring that a company follows the laws enforced by governing bodies in the geography or rules required by voluntarily adopted industry standards. Now, uh, like even for the point of privacy, in United States, I would like to like add some points in the privacy and security act. In United States, National Security Agency, they ran millions of phone call records from AT&T and T and Verizon to extract phone calls that do not match their security criteria. Even another example can be Google service in China. They what they do, they remove content which they find is not according to the Chinese government, or if the Chinese government objects, they remove that content. uh, like after when Google started detecting this, that after 5 years of constant detection, uh, mm, what happened was Chinese hackers were constantly accessing the Gmail accounts of the Chinese citizens. So then Google moved their headquarters from Google.ch to Hong Kong. So this is what I meant by privacy and security, right? I gave you some examples basically. Okay, and back to regulatory compliance. Um, the example of regulatory compliance can be HIPAA. HIPAA stands for Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. And basically, what happens is all your healthcare applications, which processes PHI, which is Protected Health Information, they are subjected to both privacy and security rules, which comes under HIPAA. So this is what I meant by regulatory compliance. And there are other compliances as well. Like it depends. Like US has different regulatory has a different set of regulatory compliance. Europe has a different. So it depends. Okay, so what are the challenges? Cloud computing definitely suffers from a lot of challenges, one of which is dynamic provisioning, like how many resources need to be provisioned and for how long they should be in order to get the maximum benefit, right? There are going to be technical challenges for the large computing infrastructure, and on top of that, we are using a lot of virtualization as well these days. So complexities are being added up a lot. It's very difficult to maintain the integration or to understand the uh, concept of integration between real and virtual infrastructure. We have security issues, and I addressed them in the disadvantages as well. So I like to repeat that security is going to be a constant threat in the area of cloud computing. Next, we have legal issues. Now, there are legal issues. For example, American government, they will check the records of the services if they find that any particular service is like a threat to the national security. But on the other hand, European government, they are very strict about the privacy and safety of their uh, citizens. But what happens, like just consider a case that um, an American cloud service provider is basically using the services from a European cloud service provider, right? So in that case, how will the legal issues be handled? Like, will the American government be able to check all the records of the citizens of the European government? They cannot do, because the system is different. The European government will not allow them, right? So these are some sort of legal issues like so. Next we have the cloud computing reference model, and this is the basic reference model. It says that um, all these services are basically kept in the form of hardware and software stack. Like for example, all the hardware assets and abstraction assets are being controlled from the bottommost layer, which is the infrastructure as a service layer, and all these facilities and services are being provided, right? In abstraction we have virtual machines and the hypervisor, right? And hardware we have the compute network storage. I told it in the first lecture. And next comes the layer of platform as a service, where you have all the middleware softwares, and the final layer comes, which is the software as a service layer. So this is one way of representation of cloud computing reference model. There is another conceptual cloud computing reference model as given by NIST, which is this. According to NIST, we have 5 actors, uh, which are basically cloud consumer, auditor, cloud provider, cloud broker, and cloud carrier. So these 5 actors are, the first one is cloud consumer, who is the person who is basically using these services. Next is the cloud provider, who is basically providing these services to the consumer. Auditor is the person who is basically doing self assessments, and they are going to audit your performance of the service, your how are the services being operated, and the security and privacy issues as well. Broker is, I said it, that it's he plays matchmaking between a consumer and a provider. Like at times it happens that there are new consumers in the field of cloud computing, and they don't know that which cloud service provider will provide them the best service. So at that time they can contact a cloud broker, and cloud broker will help them with their issue. Last is the cloud carrier, who is basically maintaining the relationships between the other actors. Fine. Next. Now, how are the various actors basically interacting? Right. Now, a cloud consumer can take the service directly from the cloud provider, or it can take the help of a cloud broker, right? And then cloud broker will contact the cloud provider, will ask for that required service, will ask for the all the contracts and everything, and then will respond back to the cloud consumer. Now, a cloud auditor will be maintaining self assessments, and will be assessing cloud consumer, cloud broker, and even cloud provider, right? Now, cloud carrier is basically these lines, right? They are maintaining the communication channel between all these actors. Now, this is a usage scenario for cloud broker, that a cloud consumer can ask a cloud broker for a certain set of services, but those services are available with different cloud providers. So cloud broker will ask cloud provider number 1, then cloud provider number 2, and then will combine these two services in a single unit and will provide back to the cloud consumer. Okay. Next is usage scenario for cloud carriers. Now, a cloud provider can So when a cloud consumer basically asks for a certain set of services from the cloud provider, then the cloud provider will have to maintain two unique service level agreements, one with the cloud consumer and the second one with the cloud carrier. In the SLA2, the CSP will basically tell the cloud carrier about the encryption details, that how the communication should be carried out, and right, with all the security and encryption details basically. And all these points have to be given in written to the cloud consumer in the SLA 1. So this is one of the usage scenario for cloud carriers. The last usage scenario is for cloud auditor. So I said that cloud auditors are the person who basically carry out those audits on various actors. So a cloud auditor at the same time can uh, run a certain set of audits on the cloud provider, right? Asking them about the contracts, the SLAs between them and the various cloud consumers, about the type of operation they are following, about the type of services that they are providing. And on the same time, they can even ask the cloud consumer that how is the service, that how is the type of service, and or what is the um quality of the service that the cloud provider is providing them, right? Okay, so these were the various usage scenarios for cloud, um, usage scenario for various actors, right, in the reference model given by the NIST. Now, we will be studying more about these operations, like cloud auditor provides these set of services, and cloud broker provide these set of services, and service management, in cloud service management we have these set of services. In service orchestration we have these layers, like this is the physical layer, all the physical machines reside here. This is the resource abstraction and control layer, where the virtual machine manager or the hypervisor is basically acting here, and these are the service layers. So we will be studying more uh, details about this reference architecture in the next lecture. In the next lecture, I will be providing you about I will providing you information about the cloud taxonomy. Okay. In taxonomy, we will have all these actors and their services in detail. So I'll end the lecture here. I hope you got some useful information. So happy learning. Take care.